There are some songs that are simply released, and then there are songs that seem to arrive carrying an entire moment with them. Dai Dai belongs to the second category. When Shakira and Burna Boy came together for the official song of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, the collaboration immediately felt bigger than an ordinary music release. It brought together two artists from completely different musical backgrounds, two distinct cultures, two recognizable voices, and two enormous global audiences. Instead of trying to make the collaboration feel like one artist had entered the other's world, Dai Dai became a meeting point between Latin pop, Afrobeats, dance pop, football culture, and the international spirit of the World Cup. That combination is what made the story behind the song so interesting. The title itself tells part of the story. Dai Dai comes from an Italian expression used to encourage someone, carrying the feeling of, come on, or, let's go. It is a phrase that fits football almost perfectly because football is built around encouragement, emotion, pressure, and the belief that something incredible can happen in the next few seconds. The title does not belong to only one country or one fan base. It sounds like a rallying cry, something that can be shouted inside a stadium, repeated by thousands of people, or understood emotionally even when the listener does not speak Italian. That simple idea became one of the foundations of the song's international identity. What makes the collaboration especially fascinating is the contrast between Shakira and Burna Boy. Shakira has spent decades developing a sound that crosses borders. Her music has moved between Spanish and English audiences, while her World Cup history made her particularly connected to football culture. Burna Boy, meanwhile, represents the extraordinary international rise of Afrobeats and African pop. His music has helped bring Nigerian musical influences to audiences around the world. Putting these two artists together meant that Dai Dai already carried a powerful cultural conversation before listeners even heard the full track. For Shakira, the World Cup connection was not completely new. Her 2010 song, Waka Waka, This Time for Africa, became one of the defining football songs of its generation and remains one of the most recognizable World Cup anthems. That history inevitably created enormous expectations around Dai Dai. People were not simply asking whether the new song would be successful. They were naturally wondering whether Shakira could create another musical moment capable of connecting with football fans across the planet. That comparison became part of the story even before the song had a chance to establish its own identity. The arrival of Burna Boy changed the equation. Rather than attempting to recreate the formula of an earlier World Cup anthem, Dai Dai introduced another musical language. Burna Boy's presence brings rhythmic elements associated with Afrobeats, while Shakira brings the Latin and pop energy that audiences have associated with her for years. The result is intentionally international. The song was designed for a tournament involving the United States, Canada, and Mexico, but its audience was never limited to North America. The World Cup was always going to turn the song into something heard far beyond the host countries. The multilingual nature of the track adds another important layer. Dai Dai moves through several languages, including English, Spanish, Italian, French, and Japanese. That choice reflects something fundamental about the World Cup. Millions of people can experience the same event while speaking completely different languages. Instead of forcing everyone into one linguistic identity, the song embraces the idea that football can communicate through sound, rhythm, movement, and emotion. A listener may not understand every word, but they can still understand the excitement behind the performance. There is something particularly effective about using different languages in a football anthem because football itself has its own universal vocabulary. A goal celebration does not require translation. A crowd singing together does not require everyone to share the same mother tongue. The tension before a decisive moment, the happiness after a victory, and the disappointment after a defeat are emotions that travel effortlessly across borders. Dai Dai taps into that same emotional language, using music as a bridge between cultures. The creative process behind a song like this is also more complicated than simply placing two famous singers in the same recording session. A World Cup anthem has to work in multiple environments. It needs to sound exciting on headphones, powerful through stadium speakers, recognizable during television broadcasts, and memorable when thousands of fans are singing or dancing together. It also has to represent the tournament without becoming so specific that it loses its international appeal. Every musical decision therefore carries an additional responsibility. That challenge becomes even more interesting when the artists involved already have enormous identities of their own. Shakira cannot simply disappear into another artist's production, because listeners expect her distinctive voice and personality. Burna Boy also brings a sound that is immediately recognizable. The collaboration therefore depends on balance. Their individual identities need to remain visible while still creating something that feels like one song rather than two separate performances placed next to each other. The arrangement reflects that balance. The track moves between rhythmic sections, melodic passages, and energetic vocal exchanges, allowing both artists to occupy their own musical space. Instead of turning the collaboration into a competition, the structure gives listeners moments where each performer can bring their personality forward. The contrast becomes part of the attraction. Shakira's vocal character and Burna Boy's rhythmic delivery create different textures, and those differences give the song movement. Another important element is the football imagery within the song's world. The lyrics reference countries and football legends, connecting the music directly to the tournament and its enormous international audience. Names associated with football history and countries participating in the competition help transform the song from a general pop release into something connected to the sporting event itself. The references create recognition for fans while reinforcing the idea that the World Cup belongs to a global community rather than a single nation. The song's release also carried a charitable dimension. FIFA stated that royalties from Dai Dai would support the FIFA Global Citizen Education Fund, which aims to raise funds for educational and football opportunities for children around the world. That means the song was connected not only to entertainment and sport but also to a broader social purpose. The music became part of a project intended to connect the excitement surrounding the World Cup with opportunities for children. That charitable element gives the collaboration another dimension. A major international song can easily become associated with charts, performances, social media, and commercial success. But when its royalties are connected to education and football opportunities, the story becomes larger than popularity. It creates a link between the spectacle surrounding the tournament and the lives of young people who may experience football as a source of community, ambition, and possibility. The visual world surrounding Dai Dai also contributes heavily to its identity. The song is not presented as if it belongs to only one city or one landscape. Its visual language reaches across different environments and cultures, reinforcing the global scale of the World Cup. Reports from people involved in the production have even highlighted the complexity of creating some of the large-scale digital environments used in the video. That behind-the-scenes work demonstrates how much technology, design, performance, and post-production can be hidden behind a few seconds of finished footage. This is one of the reasons music videos connected to global sporting events can be so fascinating. Viewers may see an image for only a moment and never think about how many people were involved in creating it. A background may have required digital artists, compositors, environment designers, camera matching, lighting work, and extensive post-production. A performance that appears effortless on screen can actually be the final result of countless decisions made long before the audience sees it. The atmosphere surrounding Shakira also became part of the anticipation. Her earlier World Cup history meant that audiences already associated her with the unique combination of football and pop music. When she began teasing Dai Dai, interest immediately grew. A teaser released from Maracana Stadium helped establish the scale of the upcoming project, connecting the new song to one of football's most recognizable venues. The teaser created curiosity without revealing everything at once, allowing fans to wonder what the finished collaboration would sound and look like. Then came the full release, and the conversation expanded quickly. Fans began discussing the collaboration, the languages, the production, the visual elements, and the question that naturally follows any major football anthem: would it become one of those songs people remember long after the tournament ends? That question is impossible to answer simply through a first listen because football songs gain much of their emotional power from context. The more people hear a song during important matches, celebrations, broadcasts, and public gatherings, the more memories become attached to it. That is one reason World Cup music is different from ordinary pop music. A regular song might become associated with a particular year, relationship, summer, or personal memory. A World Cup song can become connected to an entire tournament experienced simultaneously by millions of people. Someone may remember hearing it before a match, another person may remember it from a celebration, while someone else may associate it with watching the final with family or friends. The song becomes a soundtrack to memories rather than simply a recording. Dai Dai also demonstrates how dramatically global pop music has changed. A Colombian superstar and a Nigerian superstar can create a song for a tournament hosted across 3 North American countries, use multiple languages, incorporate different musical traditions, and reach listeners in virtually every region of the world. That kind of collaboration would once have seemed extraordinary. Today, it is becoming increasingly natural. But the international nature of the song does not mean the cultural identities disappear. In fact, the opposite can happen. The appeal comes partly from hearing recognizable musical identities placed together without requiring them to become identical. Shakira still sounds like Shakira. Burna Boy still sounds like Burna Boy. The Afrobeats influence remains present. The Latin pop energy remains present. The football atmosphere ties everything together. There is also a fascinating generational aspect to the collaboration. Shakira represents a career that has crossed multiple eras of global pop music. She has experienced the transformation from physical albums and traditional music television to streaming platforms and social media. Burna Boy represents a new era in which African artists can reach global audiences directly and influence mainstream pop culture on an enormous scale. Their collaboration therefore feels like two different chapters of international music meeting in one recording. The production has to serve both artists while also serving the event. That is why rhythm becomes so important. A World Cup song cannot depend entirely on subtle musical details. It needs movement. It needs a pulse that can survive in loud environments. It needs moments that listeners can recognize almost immediately. Dai Dai uses that rhythmic foundation to maintain momentum and keep the song connected to the physical energy of football. At the same time, the track is not only about speed. The strongest football songs usually contain an emotional idea underneath the celebration. In Dai Dai, that idea is encouragement. The title itself communicates movement and determination. The message is essentially about pushing forward, giving everything, and refusing to stop. That message works in football, but it also works outside football, which helps explain why the song can appeal to listeners who may not even be watching every match. Burna Boy's role is especially important in giving the track a broader African musical identity. Afrobeats has become one of the most influential forces in contemporary global pop, and Burna Boy is one of the artists most closely associated with that international expansion. His participation ensures that the song does not simply repeat a Latin pop formula. Instead, it becomes part of the larger conversation about how African music is shaping the sound of worldwide entertainment. For Shakira, the collaboration also represents another chapter in her relationship with global events. She has repeatedly demonstrated that her music can function across language barriers, but a World Cup creates an especially demanding stage. Every gesture, melody, visual, and performance can be watched by an enormous audience. That scale can turn a song into a defining career moment, but it also means every creative decision receives intense attention. One of the most interesting things about Dai Dai is how the song's meaning changes depending on where it is heard. In a quiet room, it is a pop collaboration. Through stadium speakers, it becomes an anthem. During a football broadcast, it becomes part of the tournament atmosphere. At a celebration, it becomes a party track. During a Shakira performance, it becomes part of her live repertoire. The same recording can therefore serve completely different purposes without changing itself. The song also benefits from the fact that football is already an incredibly visual sport. Supporters wear national colors, flags fill stadiums, players celebrate dramatically, and crowds create enormous waves of movement. Music naturally fits into that environment. A song like Dai Dai does not have to create all of the excitement by itself. It enters an atmosphere that already exists and amplifies it. Another fascinating detail is the way the song uses international references without becoming a traditional national anthem. A national anthem represents one country. A World Cup song has a much harder job. It needs to represent dozens of nations simultaneously. That means the song has to celebrate competition while also celebrating connection. Players compete against one another, but fans from different countries share the same tournament. That tension is at the heart of the World Cup experience, and Dai Dai reflects it. The song celebrates individual countries and football legends, yet the larger musical structure keeps bringing everyone into the same global celebration. The message is not that differences should disappear. It is that differences can exist within the same shared event. The response to the song also illustrates how audiences now participate in music culture. A major release is no longer consumed only through radio or television. Fans can immediately create reactions, edits, dance moments, commentary, performances, and discussions around a song. Every new version of a song can create another wave of attention. Dai Dai has therefore existed not only as an official World Cup recording but also as something audiences continue to reinterpret. Even the title became a kind of invitation. Dai Dai is short, memorable, and easy to repeat. That matters enormously for an anthem. The best football chants are often built around words that can be shouted collectively. The simplicity of the phrase allows it to travel easily between languages and audiences. There is also an interesting connection between Dai Dai and Shakira's previous World Cup legacy. Waka Waka established an enormous benchmark, and comparisons were inevitable. But trying to duplicate an earlier success would have been creatively risky. Instead, Dai Dai moves toward a different musical landscape. It belongs to 2026 rather than trying to recreate 2010. Its Afrobeats influence, multilingual structure, and modern production reflect a different era of global pop. That distinction is important because nostalgia can sometimes become a trap. Audiences often want a new song to recreate the feeling of an older classic, but the strongest new songs usually succeed by creating their own identity. Dai Dai does not need to be Waka Waka 2. It needs to become the soundtrack of its own tournament and its own generation. The involvement of FIFA and Global Citizen also gives the project a broader institutional purpose. According to FIFA, the Global Citizen Education Fund is intended to raise significant funding for children's education and football opportunities. That turns the song into part of a campaign where entertainment, sport, and social impact intersect. It is another example of how a major cultural event can be used to draw attention to causes beyond the competition itself. The timing of the release was also carefully connected to the tournament. Dai Dai arrived ahead of the World Cup, giving listeners time to become familiar with it before the biggest matches. That familiarity is crucial because an anthem becomes more powerful when audiences already recognize it. By the time the most important moments arrive, the song no longer feels new. It feels like it belongs to the tournament. And then comes the performance factor. A song can sound great on a recording, but a World Cup anthem has to survive the stage. Shakira and Burna Boy ultimately had opportunities to perform the song in front of massive audiences, giving it a life beyond the studio version. The live environment adds crowd reaction, choreography, staging, lighting, and physical energy that cannot be captured completely through headphones. The final became another major chapter in the song's story. Shakira and Burna Boy were part of the halftime spectacle at the World Cup final, placing Dai Dai at one of the most watched moments of the entire tournament. That performance effectively transformed the song from a pre-tournament release into part of the tournament's lasting memory. The song had moved from recording studio to stadium, from promotional material to a global live event. By that point, Dai Dai had already accumulated layers of meaning. It was the collaboration between Shakira and Burna Boy. It was the official World Cup song. It was a multilingual celebration. It was connected to football legends and participating countries. It supported a charitable initiative. It represented the meeting of Latin pop and Afrobeats. And finally, it became part of the visual memory of the tournament itself. That is what makes the making of Dai Dai more interesting than simply asking how two famous singers recorded a song together. The real story is about scale. Almost every element had to operate on a global level: the artists, the languages, the music, the visuals, the sporting event, the audience, and the message. Very few songs are asked to carry that much cultural weight. And perhaps the most powerful part of the story is the simple idea behind the title. Dai Dai means, come on, go on, or, let's go. In football, those words can represent the final push toward victory. In music, they represent momentum,